Hi, it's Keith from the Evangelical Free Church Stony Stratford, and we're continuing our series of short talks in the Gospel of Luke. And today we come to Luke chapter 23, verses 50 to 56. Jesus' death has had a big impact on the people who were watching. We think about the comment of the centurion when he said, "Surely this was a righteous man." And the crowd, who seemed to be sort of overcome, beating their breasts, that's almost a sign of mourning or distress. But all this was observed by those who knew him. And it notes, including the women who had followed him from Galilee. They'd all stood at a distance, watching what was going on. My mum was always one that, as my dad said, didn't question what had to be done, but did it. That was always the way she was as a Christian woman. She, even when she had very, very bad dementia, when she came to church, she knew that's where she wanted to be. She wanted to be there. She wanted to be doing the right thing where her faith was concerned. And it's interesting because we come across people who do the right thing, and particularly in the right way. First of all, we come across Joseph of Arimathea. Now, he seems to be connected with the Jewish authorities, the council and the religious leaders, but he hadn't consulted to Jesus' death, and it makes this point about him. Verse 50 and 51. Now there was a man named Joseph, a member of the council, a good and upright man, who had not consented to their decision and action. He came from the Judean town of Arimathea, and was waiting for the kingdom of God. Now he seems to be one like perhaps Nicodemus, who's actually mentioned in the Gospel of John, who were having questions about Jesus. They could clearly see there was something very special about him, and could see perhaps how the Old Testament prophecies related to him. Well, he is very bold. He goes to Pilate and asks for the body so he can give it a decent burial. The fate of the bodies of criminals was often just to be thrown on a rubbish heap outside Jerusalem, a place called Gehenna, which was connected with rotting flesh and burning rubbish. But he wants to give Jesus a dignified burial and the full burial treatment. But he can't do all of that because it's the eve of the Sabbath day. But this fulfills a prophecy. In Isaiah 53 verse 9, it says of the suffering servant, he was assigned a grave with the wicked and the rich in his death. Exactly what's happening here with Jesus. So we see Joseph's bold stand. There's some risk here in being identified with Jesus, but he does what he has to do. Then secondly, there's the women. They show real devotion. In verse 55, we read this. The women who had come with Jesus from Galilee followed Joseph and saw the tomb and how his body was laid in it. They follow, and we see that they want to give the body a decent burial as well. But it's interesting. Let's just read verse 56. Then they went home and prepared spices and perfumes, but they rested on the Sabbath in obedience to the command. That was part of the law. They wouldn't break the law, but they wanted to honour Jesus. It's interesting here, we come across people who are making a stand, but in their observance of the law and the Sabbath, want to do it in the proper way. How shall we conclude? Well, let's conclude with what Paul writes to the Colossian church. He says this in chapter 3, verse 23. Whatever you do, work at it with all your heart as working for the Lord, not men, since you know that you will receive an inheritance from the Lord as a reward. It is Christ you are serving. Here's the thing. Sometimes being a Christian, it means doing a difficult thing. And for those of you who aren't Christians, I'm going to be quite blunt about it. Yeah, there will be things you're going to have to give up. There will be things that you will have to shun. But here's the thing. You're working for the Lord. You're doing the right thing. And look what he has done for you. We're going to look at the resurrection soon. That's where we're going after this. And see what promises there are for each of us there. How did Paul conclude what he said? Well, he said this, isn't it? You will receive an inheritance. The wonderful truth, the wonderful promise of being with the Lord forever. Thank you so much for listening.